I've got Raymond Langdon here, and he's going to do a deep dive on some super good stuff. You guys are going to have some stuff to implement today. But Raymond, who do you help? How do you help them?
Great question. Great question. And I've seen a couple of your interviews. I know you start with that one usually. And I'll probably answer it a little different because I have multiple different brands. And I think, as you know, each brand or each company has its own ideal client. And then even within that, the different offers, right? They're not all targeted to the same audience. But if we were to take it in a nutshell, we work with entrepreneurs, digital service providers, and brands and agencies, pretty much in a nutshell. So one of my companies, I'll just give a quick rundown. It's called Audience Lab. We're a data and tech company. And there we work with brands and advertisers already spending X amount on current, media campaigns and paid ads, right? I have a company called the Sales Lab, which is kind of similar to some of what you do. I saw, how you grow businesses via setters and without paid ads. So we have that aspect. I always like to have multiple lead gen channels and avenues.
Dude, that's awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's dive into the branding, because you're using data so that people can have more resonance with their audience. And that's a theme that I've been doing for the last several interviews, is really creating this resonance and this magnetic appeal to draw people to you. So let's dive into that a bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, really what we do, if you think about it, and I speak with a lot of business owners and brand owners, even as a co-owner of the company, I run sales teams. So I get in and get hands-on. Like this week, I booked 25 sales calls onto my calendar and dove back in with the team to reassess, to check all the flows, just to get hands-on, right? And speaking with a lot of business owners, I'm hearing that when they go into their Facebook ads, let's just use that for example, they're stuck using the limited targeting, parameters within there, or most of them are just clicking the box, let Facebook find my ideal audience, right? And that's a big no-no, in the sense that the first month at least, they're using 80% of your budget to test. You're going to get in low quantity and quality while they're still figuring it out. Where we go into our super graph, our data grid, and we build in-market custom audiences that we know are going to be winners and run our ads straight to them and totally circumvent Facebook's targeting. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell.
Okay, so you're taking the client's list, creating lookalike audience from that list, but then you're also doing deep data research to find out how to position the messaging in the most optimum way.
Yes. In essence, that's very true. What we're doing is kind of lookalikes and customs, but we're building in a particular market. Then we can segment based off recent keyword inquiries, off up to 262 different parameters. So I can find business owners that are looking for help with back pain or whatever, consumers. And then we might go down to certain geographical zip codes or homeowners, right? Or over six figures, depends on the niche in the industry. So we segment by the market first, and then the parameters that business owner is looking to target.
Gotcha. And how different is the messaging from one segment of the list to the next?
It could be very different. It highly depends on what the objective and what niche and industry it's going to. The messaging is built custom to each particular, objective, for lack of a better phrase.
Okay. Let me get more specific with that question. Let's say that your niche is expert speakers, course creators, you're a sales coach like myself, like yourself. And we're trying to break it down even further, not just experts, but let's break it down further so we can send out hyper personalized messages to each segment. Is that part of what you do?
No, not exactly. We do only on the real high end. So within our Audience Lab brand, we have all kinds of different products and offerings. And we have an offer right now that's anywhere between $50,000 and $150,000, where we build out full data agencies for people, data as a service, and they go pitch them. So those are the only offers where we're responsible and create all the messaging for clients.
I see. Okay. Well, tell us your story, man. Let's dive into your origin story and tell us how you got to this point.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I think we all have one, right? For sure. And I think everybody's is different. They're very relevant to probably your level of success and where you've transpired or grown to. But for me, just a quick synopsis. I had about 20 years in corporate America in a pretty obscure niche, industrial laundry. I was a hybrid sales and service rep for a couple big, $500 million to $1 billion annual companies with, multiple locations and such. And again, this was a hybrid service sales role where I was actually outgrowing my own business, and they gave me a truck with products, and I go out there and service my customers and upsell, right? Very personal, face-to-face. I'm seeing the same business owners and the same clients week in and week out, 52 weeks a year, building very good relationships. Problem with that is the service side of things had a lot of repetitive bending and lifting, and I started to get degenerative back problems. So in my mid to late 30s, I saw a chiropractor who in essence told me if I kept doing that job by the time I was 55, I'd be walking like a hunchback, right? And
Oh, wow.
that's when something clicked in my mind, right? I can't go buy a new back, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no money you could put on your spine or your ability to walk, especially when you have kids and you want to see them go down the aisle, et cetera, et cetera. So that's when I started realizing I got to do something else. Stumbled across digital marketing in about 2017. And the first year and a half, I still worked my full-time job, 40, 50 hours. I was taking courses. I was reading books. I was getting the skill set. I hired a business coach before I ever put together my first offer and took it to market. And then I still remember the date, November 15th, 2019. I gambled on myself. I left the corporate job, I started working on a sales team with about a $20 million a year consultancy at the time. After about 4 or 5 months of just assessing digital businesses for 8 hours, plus what I had learned, I felt like I had the skill set to go offer value to the market. And since then, I've launched a couple of different brands.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. And you've had huge success for your clients as well. Tell us some client success stories.
Our clients in tracked revenue have over $100 million accountable to our advertising campaigns and sales stuff. And one of my brands, the first one and the only one I didn't mention, is a company called PDOCS, which stands for pains, desires, obstacles, common beliefs, and steroids, aka attention grabbers in the marketplace. That was the first business we launched. And that's really, in essence, a communication, copywriting, research, and outreach system that can be applied to organic and paid. So we've had over 3,000 students come through that program. And the first year we launched just 3 guys with a 6K product and a little 7-day challenge. We did 1.6 million cash collected and 2.3 million invoiced. And then we grew into our other 2 companies out of that. So that's kind of how they piggyback off one another.
Dude, that's big time. That's freaking huge. Congrats. Now, how are you able to be running these companies? Do you have CEOs in place for each company?
Correct. Yep. We have a team of 17 now. There's 3 co-owners that each kind of have their own staple. Like they're kind of we each kind of run one of our own, but we all are helping and putting in our input and expertise everywhere. But then we have 14 team members, a couple in one business, a couple in another, and more in our audience lab, which is our first 8-figure annual business.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, they could use that mindset that you have right now of you're really a chairman, right? You're not even the CEO. And a lot of people are like, oh, you got to be more like a CEO. And you're in a position where you're like, well, be more like a chairman. So you have a CEO, agree. You have people for all these things because you just don't have the bandwidth to go do all those things as a business owner. And man, I talk to so many 7-figure entrepreneurs and they have a tiny team and they're way tapped out. And some of them are just still one-man shows. They'll be high 6-figure, 7-figure earners and they're still running around doing everything themselves. So speak on that a little bit. How do you effectively get work done through people when you can't have your hands on it and control the quality?
You made some great points there. I see that too. And it baffles me why you would tap yourself out or still be a single man show when you're at those, those run rates, unless your profitability and your margins are super, super thin. But then you got to look at other aspects, right? But, it's all about, and that's the biggest thing I see too, Kyle, is a lot of business owners like, if I want it done right, I got to do it myself. If I take myself out of that role and replace me, it's only going to get done at 40, 60, whatever percent they think the capability. But to be honest, when you find people with the right passions and skill sets, I guarantee you there's some things right now you're focusing on in your business that you don't like, that you don't love for sure. And some that you even dislike. You don't think somebody that's skilled in that or likes doing that is going to do a better job than yourself? So that's first and foremost. And then I always tell people to start with the more remedial entry-level tasks that you're still doing. Replace yourself then. Hell, you can probably automate quite a bit nowadays, or get some $4 to $5 an hour help to do those remedial things and focus on the revenue driving things and the client acquisition scaling methods. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of business owners, they have this perception. They're like, people won't hold their work to the same standard of excellence as me. I put in 110%. But is that true? Because you're not always putting in 110% because you don't have the bandwidth to always focus on that one department. Your attention is spread thin. So really, you're only putting in 50% yourself anyways. Yeah. When you're there, you're putting in 110, but you're not always there. And you can't be firing on all cylinders at the same time. So, man, I love that. I love how you're able to scale and have such success in your companies, even as you replace yourself in some of these positions. Now, let's talk about closers. And I know we're kind of bouncing around because you have a lot of good information and a lot of cool stuff that you do.
Thank you.
But I want to talk about closers. A lot of people are having a hard time, and in my audience, they're having a hard time finding good closers. They can't replace themselves in the sales process, especially the market's changing. The trust has gone down people need to build more trust and rapport in the beginning of it, and people are more protective of their money. So you have to position your offer in a way that helps people understand that this is not only going to protect their money, but help it grow. But I've noticed a trend that closers, they got spoiled back in the last few years where it was just easy to get sales. You're just slamming down right and left. And now that it's tightened up a little bit, they're having a hard time transitioning. These sales are still happening. I have clients that are doing 6-figure months, but there's others that don't, they can't find a good closer. So let's speak on that a bit. How do you find somebody that can sell just as good or better than you?
Sure. Well, so the one thing I would always say is in the beginning, if you're a solopreneur coming up with an offer based on your passion and your skill set, nobody should be able to sell your stuff better than yourself because you should know and be more passionate than anybody. But even if you can get someone to replace yourself at 80% caliber, because you're more valuable doing the fulfillment or the thing that's generating results, right? So you're taking yourself out of where you're actually generating revenue just to collect revenue. When somebody can replace you at 80% collection, but you can handle a lot more generation of revenue. I think the overall closer landscape, you nailed a few things. But as much as people are having trouble finding good talent, there's a lot of great reps out there right now as well. You just got to know, I don't think people are doing it the right way. And I don't think, you mentioned like they're looking to get on the right offer, or as a business owner, you need your offer package. But you also need to look at how you're compensating and how you're recruiting people as your offer. Like, how much do you stand out and why would somebody go to your offer rather than the next guy? So I think not a lot of business owners really value it. They're always looking at what they're offering their clients, but not what they're offering their team members or
That's
employees.
Good. Yeah, that's good. That's real good, because at a certain point, your prospects stop being potential clients. Your prospects are A-level people that can run your team while you're away.
Yeah, actually, I've had a couple of my best hires were past a couple of my best, most successful students ever. I hired on my team. I'm like, dude, you're smart. You got my program like that. You made so much money. Like, I could use you for this. Oh yeah, I'd love to, So that's
cool.
also true. The other thing you mentioned, I'd just like to touch on super quick is the spoiled nature, right? I think we've seen a lot of that spoiled also in terms of activity. Like, I think reps are just waiting for stuff to be automatically booked to their calendar, and they're not actively booking. They're not sticking to the follow-up process. They're not doing that extra mile. They're not really recommending the right things. And I think a lot of that comes down to the
There's a lot of closers out there because they go through these trainings. There's all these coaches out here that are pumping out closers, and they paint this picture of, to where they're only working the hottest, most engaged, like ready to buy leads, and they're essentially just an order taker, which for a lot of closers, that's not going to be the case unless you work your way up to the head closer of the company.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Nailed it.
Yeah. So when recruiting people that are clients are running their own company, or maybe you are collaborating with somebody, or there's somebody in your network that's a business owner, and I've seen other people do this to where they have them come on. They kind of shift focus away from their business to go work with that person. And to bring somebody away from their own business because they're a rock star, and to get them to shut their doors because they see your vision, like that's a powerful thing to be able to do. How can you do that?
Very well. I'll get back to that in 1 second, just to touch on something you talked about earlier. When it comes to both replacing yourself and finding good talent, a lot of that comes from the culture and the skill sets and how you set up the expectations in that process. Like, for instance, I just interviewed a new sales guy to work internally for one of my teams the other day. And when we were first messaging and I was trying to gauge his interest, he's like, what are you looking for? I'm looking for skill. I'm looking for eagerness. I'm looking for dedication. I'm looking for availability. And I'm looking for somebody who wants to be a top 1% and go above and beyond. If you don't tick all those boxes, be straight up with me and tell me now. So I'm very like, this is what I want. If you don't want to be that person, you don't have those. Cool. I mean, that's fine. There's other opportunities. So you have to set a standard for what your expectations are and give them the leadership and development and training to help them get there if you got the right people. So I think that goes into all the things you talked about when it comes to replacing yourself, when it comes to bringing on the right closer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff, man. So
not to go into your latter part, I think that goes back to your network. We should always be growing our network. I don't care how good or how comfortable you are in your business or where you're at in terms of, for my example, right? I have a few different brands, team members, we're growing consistently. I'm still doing organic outreach, cold DMs every single day. So like, it's always about growing your network. I do it very dialed in, and I'm not one of those quantity over quality guys, 50 to 100 DMs. I send out somewhere between 10 to 15 friend requests, very targeted a day. And then I follow that up about 24 to 48 hours after it's accepted with a very custom voice note to that person. And it grows my network very, very well. I I don't even talk about myself other than why I connected. I keep the message all about them. No links. No, I'm a sales guy. No, I'm a dad. Nothing about me. All about them. And this works so well. It helps me get clients and people following me, but it also helps me build collaborations, kind of like what we're doing here.
Badass. Yeah, man, there's a lot of alignment for us. Now, with these people, and you're reaching out to them and you're talking to them about themselves and their company, and you're sending these personalized messages, how are you transitioning into a strategy call or a sales call?
And that's the first question I always get. And it's great because you know what psychology and human nature has taught me and why I do it this way? When you keep it all about them as a byproduct, their first message back is, Ray, I would love to hear more about what you do and how that looks, right? So they are asking, right? I'm not injecting some smooth transition or coming in, hey, I'm a sales guy. Do you need help with this? Like, hey, man, cool. And my most common response, I'll be happy to send you some if you want to listen or play them for your audience later, some of the audios I get in reply. But I get, dude, no one has reached out to me in this method. This is awesome. One guy last week, I'm stealing this to my DM center. They're now, this is my new outreach method, right? So like when you're getting that market feedback and people, no one's reached out to me, Raymond, and said they just wanted to join a genuine connection and learn more about me. That's awesome. Hey, what do you do more? I just looked at and it gets people curious to go and looking at your posts and your content as well.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I would love that. I appreciate that offer, and I'll definitely take you up on that. I'd like to see what you're putting out there. That's cool.
Yeah,
and I get it.
Working really well.
It makes sense. You lead with curiosity. You lead by being interested. You ask them questions about themselves, and then they start to feel like they have to reciprocate. They're like, I got to give back. This guy's it's all about me. I don't want to talk about myself anymore. I'm going to ask him about him.
That's what happens 9 out of 10 times.
Okay. And then they ask you about you, and how do you get them from there to the sales call without getting ghosted? What's your value proposition to get them on a call?
Getting ghosted, and that almost never happens to me, especially if I'm setting it myself in the DMs. And the only times I get ghosted are through ad campaigns where, somebody booked and doesn't show because they booked with 7 fucking companies. Like that's kind of where I seem to get in DMs. It's because, well, my process, I use what's called an eco framework. I engage them first, then I kind of assess where they're at. Then I assign what's called a new frame, and that's where I get them. And then I confirm that made sense. And then I get an obligation, and I hold them accountable to the next action step. So what I mean by that is when I assess their gap, let's just say they transition. And again, when I set this, I knew who this person is and what they do. They don't know that necessarily the way my message comes off. I'm like, hey, I just connected because I'm not sure how the algorithm works, but you punched up in my recommended or whatever. I just say something to drop their curiosity and drop down any resistance. And then I keep it all about them. So they're like, oh, cool. And then they just listen. And then they reply pretty organically, like I said. So the transition happens. They're like, what do you do? Well, actually, maybe that's why Facebook recommended us. Looking over your profile, it says you're a high ticket rep. Curious if you're currently looking for new opportunities or you're hitting your current on-track earnings. Boom. So then I assess, no, man, I'm not hitting my on-track earnings. Okay. Hey, you know what I'm doing to help people do that? You know where most people go wrong? Does that make sense? Yeah, Ray, that totally makes sense. So their brain, Kyle, goes, what Ray said just made sense. Nobody's told me that before. How do I find out more? And then they're kind of in.
Super badass. So you're leading with value in Messenger. You're giving some value in Messenger before even 100%. Going to the call.
Correct. Always.
Now, how do you recreate that through a setter who doesn't? They're like, oh, I don't know how to give value.
I automate the resources and break it down in the system. I actually have a team of setters working internally for me alongside of me. That's why I still do it daily. I teach it to my team internally twice a week, and I get on an implementation and support call, and I look at their posts, their conversations, their screenshots, and I'm always, you know what, that's why that person didn't get back to you. If you tweet that message like this, watch, see what happens, and then boom, they're like, oh, cool. So it's all making sense. So it's kind of that constant thing. But I also build out anything that I'm sending in terms of value. I'll build it into an automated asset, whether it's a Loom video, whether it's a PDF, so they can send them a resource.
Awesome. All right. So one last question, and then I'm going to move into where do people go next. But that question that I have is, when recruiting salespeople, are you going for Indeed ads? Are you posting ads on Indeed or different job boards, or are you doing straight out of Facebook groups?
Straight out of Facebook groups in my own network. I've had the luxury. So one of my companies called the Sales Lab, I've already trained and worked with quite a lot of reps. And I'm very good at staying in constant contact. We all know they have a cycle on an offer, and 3 months down the line, somebody that was doing well is looking for an opportunity. So there's kind of just people I'm always putting out feelers with. I'm also partnered with 2 or 3 other sales agencies that have a wide network of reps. And I just kind of bring them
Smart.
through my training to refine it a little bit and make it more of a custom organic feel rather than a script per se on a sales call. And then I put them into an offer. So I'm generally
Super
using a
smart.
warm network, and once in a while still use Facebook groups though.
Yeah. 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 John D. Rockefeller said, own nothing but control everything. And if you can align yourself with other agencies that are feeding that pipeline, that's freaking, dude, that's some high level stuff. Now, how are you incentivizing them? What does the agency owner get out of it?
It always varies. A lot of times they are putting an offer out to me first, and they're reaching out, seeing if I will promote something, if I can refer somebody. So generally speaking, I'm doing a favor or something of value first. And then when I hit them with something in return, they're just like, oh yeah, I'd love to help you out next time you need somebody or whatever. Or we'll work out a compensation. Hey, what does it cost you? What are your hard costs to place a rep in an offer? Cool. Let me give you that plus 10% and we'll work something out. Right. So whatever seems to make, these are always really custom because they're what I call MBPs, mutually beneficial partnerships. And they've really been the biggest foundation from us going from a $0 company when we launched in 21 to now being 3 brands, all, pretty successful. It's mutually beneficial partnerships.
You're killing it, dude. You're crushing it. And you're really taking that collaboration angle and creating this thing to where you magnetize all these different assets and people, bring them together, and you're leveraging other people's work and other people's minds. So I love what you do. Where do people go next? How do they dive deeper with you?
Yeah, totally. The only thing I would say to what you just said, you're 100% spot on, and that's huge. But it's also very selective in targeting. Like people look at me and they're like, "You don't have 20,000 followers." No, I don't. I'm very, very selective right now, and I always have over 1,000 pending friend requests because out of 1,000, I'll probably accept 20 or 30. They're just so I'm very selective. So my content's hitting the right people, and I'm always always adding, but I'm adding with a very specific objective. Once you're doing that, those things can form. Well, Kyle, you can either check me out here on Facebook. That's where I'm most active. My real zone of genius and how I launched, and you guys might be familiar with Dan Henry in this space. He just asked me to record some modules for his current course that he's launching on Facebook.
Oh, no shit.
Using groups.
Super cool.
Yeah, because they kind of thought I was a little better than what they had, at least for this particular course. So I just did that. But so I started with Facebook organic. I'm still on Facebook every day and actively doing it while I'm training teams and building my team. So directly through my Facebook,
okay.
my Messenger.
How did you get Dan Henry's attention? How'd you pull that off?
I think I replied to a post though where they were asking for experts for certain things in that one, but he and I have we've gone back and forth. I've been on calls with him a couple of times back in the year. He actually tried to pitch me when I almost bought my first program back in the day. I remember I was on a phone call driving in that work truck I told you I used to do with Dan Henry, and he couldn't close me. But we've kind of stayed in contact. We've kind of ascended him more so, no doubt. But in a similar trajectory in terms of our offers and our audiences, they're kind of always kind of vibing. So I see a lot of his stuff. He probably sees a little of mine. It was actually his head of operations, Joe Dispenza. I'm sorry if I pronounce your last name, Joe, that reached out to me about this particular course. So he's kind of running the project.
Dude, super cool. All right. If you guys want to connect with Raymond on a deeper level, if you want more resources from him, if you want his help with organic marketing or scaling out your team, comment below, guys. Comment below, and I will be sure you get in contact. But thanks, everybody, for being here. And thank you, Raymond.
Awesome. Great to be here, buddy.
See ya.